All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're taking a deep dive into a world that's part Mad Max, part House of Cards, and a whole lot of what the heck is going on.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it is. We're talking post-apocalyptic society, power struggles, manipulation, the whole shebang.
The good stuff.
The really good stuff. We're going to be looking at a chapter from the online serial 2035 by the Appalachian Gorilla. Imagine a world where, well, you've got these bugmen running around causing chaos.
Bugmen?
Yeah, bugmen. They're kind of a big deal in this world. Anyway, the old mayor's dead, and a character named Tom is basically calling the shots from behind the scenes.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where are we going with this?
We're going to unpack how power works in this crazy world, how people manipulate each other to get what they want, and what it all says about, human nature.
That's a pretty hefty topic.
It is, but this chapter gives us a lot to work with. Right from the start, you see Tom, this guy who's super strategic, thinking about how to fill the power vacuum.
Yeah, how does he do that?
Well, he lays out two options. He could just take charge himself and become the mayor.
Straightforward.
Right. Or, and this is where it gets interesting, he could put a puppet in place, someone he can control.
So he's already thinking about manipulating the situation to his advantage.
Exactly. And he's not afraid to use fear to get what he wants. The Mugmen, they're not just a random threat, they're a tool.
A tool for what?
For keeping the townspeople scared, dependent on him for protection.
Classic power move. Create a problem, then offer the solution. We see that all the time, even in the real world.
Oh, absolutely. Leaders have been using fear to consolidate their power forever.
It's like, think about how wartime leaders use the threat of an enemy to rally support and justify their actions.
Yeah, good point. But here's the twist. Tom doesn't even want to be mayor. He prefers to work from the shadows.
Ah, the puppet master. Classic archetype.
You got it. He wants to pull the strings without getting his hands dirty. And he's got his eye on this guy, George.
There's George.
He's described as this guy with good morals, wants to do the right thing. Tom sees that as a weakness he can exploit.
It's almost Machiavellian, the way he analyzes George and figures out how to manipulate him.
Totally. And you see it play out when Tom starts subtly suggesting that George should become mayor. He talks about restoring order, bringing back justice and courts. It's stuff that will appeal to George's sense of duty.
It's clever how he uses language to frame the whole situation to his advantage.
Right. And then he gives George this little piece of advice. Act confident even if you don't know what you're doing.
Chilling, right. It's like he's giving George the cheat codes to leadership, but with a dark twist.
Totally. But just when you think Tom has it all figured out, there's this other character who enters the scene.
Uh-oh. Who's that?
Desiree, George's wife. And let me tell you, she throws a major wrench into Tom's plans.
How so?
Well, Desiree loves her moonshine, like a lot, and she's not exactly shy about it.
Oh, I see where this is going.
It's actually pretty funny. At one point, Tom calls her a pivotal part of the plan while let's just say she's not exactly sober.
It's like a comedy of errors playing out against this backdrop of power struggles and manipulation. The contrast is brilliant.
And it highlights how people react so differently to the same situation, right? Tom's amused by Desiree's drinking, sees it as just another thing he can control.
Whereas George is mortified. He's worried about what people will think.
Exactly. And then you've got Tom's wife, who offers her own, shall we say, unique advice on how to handle Desiree.
Oh boy. I can only imagine. This whole thing sounds like a tangled web of intrigue.
It is. And it makes you wonder, what does all of this say about Tom as a leader? Is he a villain, a pragmatist, or something else entirely?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to answer it, I think we need to look beyond the surface, consider the ethical implications of his actions.
Definitely. And that's what we'll be doing as we dive deeper into this chapter of 2035.
It's kind of crazy how this fictional story almost mirrors real-world power struggles. You see leaders all the time saying they're doing things for the greater good.
Right.
Even when it means bending the rules, maybe doing some things that aren't strictly ethical.
It's like that old saying, the ends justify the means. But where do you draw the line? When does doing what you think is necessary become just plain wrong?
It's a tough question. Philosophers have been debating that for centuries. Is it okay for leaders to lie to people, to trick them, even if they think it's for their own good?
Yeah, it's like walking a tightrope. And I wouldn't want to be the one making those calls. But let's get back to Tom. Do you think he really believes he's doing the right thing? Or is he just, power hungry?
That's a good question. The text, it gives us some hints. Tom, he keeps saying that he's doing all this to ensure their survival,
Hmm.
because of the bug man and everything.
So he's basically saying the world's gone crazy, so the old rules don't apply.
Right. He's saying it's a kill or be killed situation, so you got to do what you got to do.
But even if he believes that, I mean, he still killed the last mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And he's using people like George.
True. It's a gray area. Good and bad leadership, it's not always so black and white,
Mm-hmm.
especially when things are this messed up. And that's what makes this story so interesting, so real.
It forces you to think about what you would do in that situation, how far you'd be willing to go. All right, so we've talked about Tom, his motivations, how he manipulates people. But are there any real-world examples of this puppet master thing?
Oh, absolutely. History's full of them. Think about Cardinal Richelieu. He was the real power behind the French throne back in the 1600s.
Richelieu, wasn't he like a cardinal or something?
Yep, Cardinal. But he basically ran the country. He knew how to pull strings, how to get things done without being the king himself.
Interesting. Anyone else come to mind?
Oh, plenty. Rasputin. That Russian monk who had so much influence over the Tsar and Tsarina. He's like the ultimate puppet master.
Wow. It's kind of creepy when you think about it. Power working behind the scenes. You never know who's really in control.
Right. And you see it even today. Think about political strategists, lobbyists. They're not elected officials, but they had a huge impact on what happens. They know how to work the system.
Yeah, and it's scary because you might not even realize you're being manipulated. Okay, so this deep dive, it's like a lesson in how to avoid being someone's puppet.
You could say that, but it's also about more than that.
Mhm.
It's about understanding how power works, how it can be used for good or for bad,
Yeah.
and how we can all, play a role in that.
Man, this has been mind-blowing. We've gone from bugmen to French cardinals to mind control, all because of this one chapter.
Stories are powerful. They can help us understand things that might be hard to grasp otherwise. In this story, it leaves us with a big question. What happens next?
Yeah. Tom's got his plan, but will it work? Will George figure out what's going on? And what about Desiree? Will she mess everything up?
Hopefully, the Appalachian Guerrilla will answer those questions in the next chapter.
Yeah.
Until then, we can use our imaginations.
Right. What do we think will happen? What would W.E. do if we were in their shoes? Okay, so we've covered a lot. We talked about Tom's leadership, his manipulations, the ethics of it all. But before we finish up, I want to turn it back to the listeners. This whole story, it's set in this crazy post-apocalyptic world, like everything's gone wrong, right?
Right.
No government, danger everywhere, you got to make tough choices just to survive.
Definitely. It's high stakes, high pressure, and it really changes how people behave.
Yeah, like the people who come out on top, they're not always the official leaders.
No, not necessarily. It's more about being resourceful, being tough, being willing to do what needs to be done, even if it's not pretty.
That's Tom in a nutshell. He's not afraid to take charge, but it makes you wonder, right? If you were in his shoes, what would you do?
That's the big question. Would you try to be the leader, be in charge of everything?
Or would you be more like Tom, working behind the scenes, pulling the strings?
And what about those tough decisions?
Mm-hmm.
The ones where there's no easy answer. What's right, what's necessary,
Yeah, it's easy to judge Tom, but if you were in that world, who knows what you'd do?
I think that's what this story is really about. It's like a mirror, right? It makes us look at ourselves and how we might act under pressure.
It makes you think about leadership, about power, about what we'd be willing to do to survive.
And remember, power isn't just something that happens in a post-apocalyptic world, right? It's everywhere.
Yeah, at work, in families, even with friends.
It's important to see it, to understand how it works, how people try to influence each other, sometimes without us even realizing it.
So we don't become someone's puppet.
Exactly. We have to be aware. We have to think critically. We have to make our own choices.
Well, this deep dive has been a wild ride. We've gone from talking about bugmen and moonshine mayors to French cardinals and mind control.
And we've learned a lot about power, about manipulation, about how to navigate a world where things aren't always what they seem.
Yeah, and hopefully it's made you, think a little differently about the world around you, about the people you interact with, about your own choices.
The next time you're in a situation, any situation, take a second to step back, look around, and ask yourself, who's really in control here?
Am I dancing to someone else's tune? That's a great question to ask.
And if you are, maybe it's time to change the music.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. We've really dug deep into this chapter of 2035 by the Appalachian Guerrilla. But the story isn't over yet.
No, not at all.
There's so much more to explore. So if you're intrigued by what we've talked about today, I highly recommend checking out the full serial. You can find it on the Appalachian Guerrilla's Substack.
It's a great read, and it might just change the way you see the world.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.